Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, and thank you for listening wherever you are and on whatever platform you are listening on. Today's topic is universal to all of us as basketball coaches. We all teach it, we all do it, we all implement it in some form. It's man-to-man defense. This episode will hopefully serve as either a teaching or a learning tool for newer coaches and a reflective tool for more experienced coaches who've kind of been in the game for a while. I know we're always looking to get better, and obviously one of the best ways for us to get better is to hear each other's ideas, reflect on those ideas, and this topic, talking about man-to-man defense, is no different. So to help discuss man-to-man defense with me, I'm so happy to be joined by Coach Billy Donovan. Coach, not a bad name to have as a basketball coach. How you doing?
Nice one to trade on in the industry sometimes. I'm doing well. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing quite well. We're excited to be able to talk about this. So let's get right into it, Coach. Let's get into your basketball journey, your coaching journey. I know you definitely have some experience and have been around the coaching profession for a while. So where's basketball and where's coaching? Where's it taking you, and where are you currently at right now?
I've been in it a long time, but I really haven't gone too far in terms of travel. I grew up in a town called Milton, Massachusetts. I live there now with my wife, Jamie, and our 5 kids. You can see my oldest is placed out there in the background. I went to Milton High School. I played for a Hall of Fame Massachusetts coach, Mike Goodless. I was blessed to have him. He taught me a lot about practice preparation, game preparation, scouting. But his big thing was man-to-man defense. He coached most of his career pre-shot clock in Massachusetts. So we played a real stifling half-court man-to-man, a little bit of pressing involved at times, depending on our personnel. But he won over 300 games, 4 sectional championships, and 2 state championships. So that's kind of the system I was raised in. After college, I came back to Milton High School and started working as a teacher and a coach. I've coached a lot of sports. Basketball, though, has been the one constant, and that's always the one I've stayed true to. I started out coaching for the man who was actually my freshman coach when I was there, a guy named Sean LaPresti, who will probably someday be a Hall of Fame coach as well. He's won a couple sectionals and a state title, and that's who I succeeded a few years ago. He was a little bit more offensive oriented, so he allowed me to kind of run the defense for the program, and we had a lot of success. We won 4 league championships, a sectional title, got to a sectional final, and we won a state championship in 2009. In 2010, I jumped over and became the girls coach at Milton High School. I was lucky to have that job for 7 years, and Coach LaPresti stepped down, and I've been the boys coach now for 3 years. I went back to the boys side.
Well, it's fascinating. I always like to hear about coaches who kind of go from girls and then like coaching boys and kind of see both worlds. I think sometimes some people feel like they get stuck and like, oh, I only coach boys or only coach girls. But obviously, if the opportunity is there and you love coaching, either one's great. There's great opportunities coaching either.
Exactly. Yeah, I think coaching's coaching and athletes are athletes, and the kids want to be pushed and coach well and be held accountable. We play in a really good public school league, the Bay State Conference. Girl I coached against my first year, Blake Dietrich, is now plays WNBA with Washington. Braintree High was a perennial power. There was one point when all 5 of their starters at a public school ended up as Division I players. Wow. 2 at Villanova, 1 at Penn, 1 at Liberty, and 1 at Colgate. So we had tough competition.
Yeah, right.
But it was great. It was great to coach against players like that, and boys or girls, and great coaches on both sides. I've made some good friendships, and it's fun. It's not work. It's just so much fun to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And yeah, to your point earlier about, players want to play, players want to be coached, and it's competition and they're athletes. So there's so many similarities in that. Yeah, it's fun to coach either. I've been happy. I've been able to coach boys and girls, and both of them are great. So definitely a fan of doing that. So let's get into something really quickly that's interesting to me because I don't have this in Arizona and you do, which is about the contact rules that are there in Massachusetts. For me, I can contact my girls every day. I could do practice every single day. Obviously, not if there's a pandemic, but under normal circumstances, I could do what I want every single day of the week, 365 days a year minus holidays. But yours is a little different. You can't be in contact with your players year round. So, what are some challenges that poses for you, and how do you kind of work around that and really make sure you're maximizing that contact time with your players?
Yeah, so there's so many levels to it in Massachusetts.
Hmm.
We can have very limited contact in the off season. Like I can go to their summer league games, spring league games, fall league games, but I can't directly coach them. I can't directly work them out in the off season. And there's definitely ways a lot of people get around it. For years, and this goes to when I was in college, I would come home and volunteer because I was lucky as a student athlete to have people, coaches and alumni would open our weight room, open our gym at our school. So I started doing that when I was in college as a way to give back. And that's really how I knew I wanted to really follow coaching. So I've done that where, there'll be girl sport athletes, there'll be boy sports athletes, weight room, using the gym. So I'm kind of there. It's almost like a rec center, and it's a volunteer basis. And then if kids are asking questions, I can guide them, but I can't really like fundamentally work them out. And as much as I'd like to sometimes, I don't want to be a rule breaker.
Yeah.
Going to games, like I can talk to them at their fall league games, but I can't sit on the sideline and coach them or fall, summer, spring. I can talk to them maybe after, but it's limited. And our state coaches association, our MBCA, is great, and it's something they're working a lot with our state organization, the MIAA, to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've noticed is in our town, in other towns, public schools, the privates in New England, which is such a great league, the NEPSAC, that's a way they can scoop kids up, and they can offer them that because they play by different rules. They can offer that whole year workout schedule and contact, and there's a lot of AAU overlap, I think, with some of those NEPSAC coaches and programs. So it can be an uphill battle, and I think our state association's fight is, the towns hire us, these public schools hire us. We're not making any money off of it, really. I probably end up with a loss every season after buying meals, buying stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not paying for these leagues to help the kids out as much as I can. We're here to volunteer for the most part. We're part of the school community, part of the town community. Let us, within reason. I think there's some coaches that would probably take advantage, and I think that it becomes on the athletic directors to hold the coaches accountable that want to bend that law. But we're hoping to change it.
Yeah. I can imagine it's tough, and it sounds like there's also a lot of gray area that some coaches get into. Where like, oh, is this technically considered coaching or not? And I know that there's even discussion about that, even in Arizona, about there's some certain restrictions, but there tends to be so much murkiness and so much of a gray area with that. But I can imagine that there's some coaches who might overstep the line, or you just don't know if they are or not. And sometimes the language itself might just get a little confusing. I mean, that's my interpretation.
I agree. It can be tough. And I would say, though, in my almost 20 years now doing it, most kids want it.
Mm-hmm.
They want that extra work. And if you're willing to do it with them, even on our limited basis, that they're seeking that out if they want to be good.
Yeah.
But a lot of it will go into our practice planning. We really regiment our, and we'll talk about this later, but our regimented, how I plan it out. And I try to make Saturday like a big skill day.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the off season, and we were very, we try to repeat the drill names all the time to the point where like the older players, by the time end of the sophomore year, start of the junior year, if you yell out, eagle layups or whatever the drill is, the kids are going to, mostly the older kids can get into it, and then they can get the younger kids. Mm-hmm. And when I give them their off season workout, I list the name of the drills, and I'll describe them because I'm kind of OCD that way. But at least then the kids are like, okay, I've done this 15, 20 times this season. This is the drill I know is, I'm trying to work on my weekend layups, or I'm trying to work on, dribble combination, moving to a pull-up jump shot, whatever it is. It's real skill specific that we do during the season. And then, the kids that want to be good will carry it over in the other 9 months of the season, or 9 months of the year, excuse me.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. That kind of in your practice planning, you're having these drills or things that you do in practice that you do over and over again, and the players know the terminology, they know what it is, and so that if you have to release them on their own, there's really no guesswork when you're like, well, here's what you can work on. These are the things that we're doing a lot in practice. So if you do those on your own, you're going to see the results when we can have contact again.
Yeah.
Mhm. So let's kind of jump right in here to man defense. It's so interesting to hear everybody's like thoughts about what to do and how to do it right. And it's so universal because we all do it in some form. No matter what defense you run, you're still doing man defense principles. So let's get into a little bit more on like the basic end. What is essential in terms of man principles that are essential for your teams to be successful? And do you find that when players come to you that there's some retraining or some habits that some of your players have to unlearn so they can get those basics done the right way?
Yeah, there can be a lot of that. I do my best to work with the middle school coaches.
Hmm.
I mean, they're parents that are volunteering their time, and but some of them will fall into, we're gonna play 2-3 zone, and then when they get to, and I go down and I'm not against zone. We play some zone,
Hmm.
um, and I'm not calling them lazy because again, these are people that are working 40, 50 hours a week and then volunteering for a couple practices and a couple games on the weekend. But I always offer to run coaches clinics for them and come down and offer run practice time. And a lot of coaches will take advantage. So certain years, I know I have groups coming up that are going to be at least introduced to our theory and how we're going to do it and our terminology. And then there's other years where it's completely new. I'm lucky that my freshman coach and my JV coach are both alumni that I both coached. So they know me. They know how I like to coach. They've known the terminology, most of their adult lives now. But we try to break it down from day one. And even with the varsity guys that have gone through it, 2, 3, even 4 years for some of them, it's the first few days are very simple where we're getting into our stance, our footwork, our shell drill, and then the simple breakdowns on the shell to teach the newer guys, but to really reinforce for the older guys who may have played who do play for different AAU and club teams in the off season of like, these are our fundamentals. We play a real aggressive on the ball side and with a lot of weak side help and just kind of getting kids back into the motion of like, if you're on the weak side, you got to be hard middle, seeing ball and man, and really kind of drilling them with the terminology and having it echo throughout the gym. And we'll have about 90 kids try out for all 3 teams. And even the freshman guys that are a little lost, we just want them saying, hey, see ball, see man, I'm in help, I'm on the man, and start to kind of build that foundation for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So are you seeing when you're kind of reteaching and kind of having to unlearn bad habits? One of the things I hear a lot of coaches feel like they have to reteach or teach a lot is the way that the players have their hands when they're on ball. Is that, I'm assuming there has to be. What is your kind of philosophy about where the hands are supposed to be when somebody's guarding the ball?
Almost our goal is an arm's length away.
Mm-hmm.
So with the older guys, we can be a little more specific in terms of like our scouting, where we want their offhand to mirror their shooting hand. And then the other hand, like, so if I'm going against a righty shooter, I want my left hand up.
Yep.
My right hand kind of, it should be about an arm's length and then another fingertips, so we're not getting hand checking rules. That's become a big point of emphasis in Massachusetts referees with the hand checking the last few years. And scout specific, if we're playing against a quicker player, we might give him a little bit more room. But we want to be able to mirror the shot without fouling and then still have that contact and that space between them is at least an arm's length so they can.
Right. Well, that's interesting that you mentioned that because I wonder if that's a nationwide thing, because here in Arizona, we got the same thing about hand checking and how that's really being cracked down and where your hand's at. And, people really having to be aware of, if your hand is, going to be near a player's hip or is going to touch someone, the whistle's going to get blown. So it's interesting that I wonder if that's more of a national thing that's really being enforced.
Maybe federation. We went to federation, and it's funny because some of the younger officials are really good about it, and they'll communicate it to the players pregame, the coaches pregame. They'll call it early to kind of really set the tone. And then your veteran officials who haven't called that really probably most of their careers.
Yeah.
So, and I this year or the last 2 years, I had a player who's about 20 points a game, very skilled scorer. And there were nights where he was getting to the line early in each half for the bonus because people just putting their hands on him.
Yeah.
And then there were other nights where, he had 2 or 3 guys running at him, and it was like he was getting body checked going through the lane sometimes, and he wasn't getting much. So, the consistency can be up and down. But I do like that idea because I think it's good for teaching defense to play with your feet.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, about playing with your feet, another thing I also hear a lot is about footwork and maybe the lack of footwork. So when players get to you typically, and again, you've explained it, that a lot of times you have, middle school coaches who are volunteers and working other jobs and really don't have maybe the time or even the knowledge in some cases to really implement things like footwork correctly. What do you notice about footwork right away that makes you go like, okay, we got to fix that, like this is wrong? Are there habits that you see like that players are consistently doing that you have to fix right away with footwork?
Absolutely, it ties into their stance. I mean, a lot of younger guys want to play high and
Yeah.
almost run instead of staying low and sliding.
Mm.
And again, that's another thing we hammer home, and we try to build it a lot early into our preseason conditioning, where we'll do like I got this from he's currently the Charlestown High head coach. He was the Brighton head coach. He's won several state championships as a coach and assistant coach and as a player. A guy named Hugh Coleman. He calls them bricks. He actually puts 2 bricks in each kid's hands. I haven't gotten permission to do that in our school quite yet. So we kind of have them hold basketballs, and you got to do over and back 16 times on the lane slides in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm watching one end, my assistant coach watching another, and I'll bring in some alumni, especially for tryout week when we have a lot of kids in the gym. And if somebody's not in their stance, like, okay, we gotta do it again. We gotta do it again, and we're really trying to hammer home like I'm almost willing to, they don't know this, and I hope, part of me hopes they watch, but if they don't watch, that's okay too. Sometimes I'm willing to cut them some slack on the time, as long as they're low and sliding their feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, staying low, and I think a lot of this comes to also just being in shape. So let's kind of touch on that really quickly. For you and the way that you play on defense, I have to imagine it's absolutely critical that your players are in shape. And I know you're emphasizing the conditioning within like practice, but how much does conditioning kind of work within like your preseason stuff or off-season stuff? Or are you of the philosophy that the players need to make sure they're taking care of that on their own, so that you're just going to be focusing more on the basketball stuff when that comes?
No, that's another thing we hammer home to them. It's part, again, I can't hold conditioning sessions, but if there's an open gym opportunity where, again, I'll open it to every athlete in the building. We got about 1,000 kids in our school, and I'll get rugby kids who want to show up and punt. We have a big field house.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have, soccer kids already beginning their off season wanting to kick the ball around. But my older guys know, and they'll say to the younger guys who maybe just want to play some pickup when we have those open gyms, which I don't say anything to them. I really don't.
Yeah.
But my older guys will go over and say, hey, like, we're going to run sprints. Like, you're going to need this in 6 weeks. I'd give them in the spring, towards the end of the year, I'll give them a workout. And then again in the fall, when we're allowed to have an in-school meeting, I'll give them something about 6 weeks out. I post practices daily outside my classroom. I teach history at the school. And I'll post the first 3 days of tryouts a month before we start. So they see exactly like what day, like what drills to expect. We're going to condition here. And it's on them, but I try to give them as much information coming in. And I've been lucky. I've had some real, as a boys assistant coach, as the girls head coach, now the 3 years as the boys head coach. I've been real lucky to have good leaders and my upperclassmen and veteran players that get that message out to these, their younger teammates, that like, this is what coach expects. And if we want to be good and we want to be able to focus on game planning and things that are going to help us win games, like, we have to come in shape. Yeah. I've always had good captains, and even kids that aren't captains in title who haven't gotten the vote, who are just good senior leaders. I had 2 seniors this year that barely played any minutes, and they knew that coming in, but they were kids at spring league games, summer league games, fall league games, driving younger kids in the preseason times when I could open the facility for anybody who wants to come in. They're the guys on top of the younger players, and just been real blessed with that.
I think the message is just so powerful for a younger, player when they hear it from an older player, because then they know, like, not only do they know that that's what you as a coach expects, but like, obviously for that younger player, they know, okay, like, this is for real. Like, this older player, this senior's telling me this, like, clearly they bought in and clearly they believe in that message too. So I better get in gear, and I better, follow along with this, because not only is that what the coach wants, but clearly, this senior who I look up to, they've bought in, and this is what they expect of me too. I think that's really powerful. Yeah,
it's something that we focus a lot on our culture, and the way our facility and all the different programs we have in our field house, our JVs practice with us every day. Mm-hmm. And so those younger guys are, even though they're JV, they're kind of part of the varsity team. And our freshmen are with us, not on the same court, but on a neighboring court a couple times a week as well. So they're seeing what the older guys are expected to do, the JV and the varsity. The JV guys definitely see what the varsity guys are expected of, and a lot of that is held on them too. So even as younger players, they get a sense. And we're kind of a smaller school in our league, and we do lose a lot of kids. We have a lot of private schools that neighbor our community, and the kids from our town do leave a lot, about 10 to 15%, I think, every year. Not just for athletics, but go to some of the Catholic schools that are in our state federation, the MIAA, and then other prep schools. So if I got a freshman that can play, or a sophomore that, like this year, I handed the ball to a sophomore day one as a point guard, and it was on him, but he was with us at the end of last season as a JV player. So he had a sense of what to expect coming in.
Well, that's probably really useful, because you never know when somebody's going to have to step up in any sense. And so you want to make sure that there's that connection, and there's that, where JV knows exactly what it's needed to be up at varsity or whatever the level is going to be, because at a moment's notice, you could be handing off the ball to that person, and you definitely don't want to have to teach them a whole new system, or have them be around guys that they've never seen before, don't know anything about.
Yeah, there are days when having 25, 26 guys in the gym can be challenging. Everybody moving it all the time, and it can be. And then you got a kid who seeks extra help after school, and obviously we encourage that. And guys coming in and out of drills sometimes for that. But it's beneficial. At the end of this, I played 7 sophomores on my varsity this year. So we're kind of a younger team with a couple of really good seniors and a couple of good juniors. But I had a couple sophomores on the JVs that I ended up calling up that came up and dressed for us in the state tournament and were with us the last couple of weeks of the regular season, and they even got a little game experience in a February vacation tournament. And they stepped right in. And I try to give my 2 assistants the flexibility to run some of their own offensive sets and do some things they need to do, because I think they're excellent coaches, and I know they're excellent coaches, and I hope they have some aspirations to move up eventually, hopefully at different schools. Not seeking out my job. But for the most part, I would say 75 to 80% of our stuff, they're mimicking every day. And it's great, because then when guys come up, if they go from freshman to JV or in JV to varsity, they're pretty well versed in what's going on and what to expect.
Right. Kind of goes back into that common language, and knowing the expectations, and knowing as a program what's being expected kind of on the court and off the court as well. So definitely makes a lot of sense, and can make your job a lot easier when there's that easy transition like that.
So my high school coach was big on, and he just actually retired from teaching in our school last year. He's 72 now. But I still stay in touch. I meet him up every once in a while for scouting trips, and he always hammers home to me every time I talk basketball: coach the coaches. If your coaches are doing what you're doing, the trickle down is going to be felt. And again, I'm lucky. Both my assistants, Tommy Phelan, my JV coach, Greg Landon, my freshman coach, are excellent coaches on their own way, but have bought into what I'm trying to do. And we're now this will be year 4 of us all together, and starting to really turn a good corner.
That's great. So with man-to-man defense, another thing that as we're talking about, I got to thinking was that because there's a lot of players that they play club and they play AAU, and there's a lot of games that a lot of players play, and I don't want to make any stereotypes, and I don't want to generalize too much, but typically when players are playing a lot of games, defense might not necessarily be emphasized, and if somebody scores, some players might be like, whatever, and then now it's just my turn to be on offense. Have you found that you've had to kind of almost reprogram a mentality on defense where they're guarding their man, that is a personal challenge that they take? Is that a cultural thing that you've kind of built in? How do you kind of build that mentality of taking pride in defense, especially if man-to-man?
We try to do a lot of competition stuff. 3-on-3s, 30 seconds, the ball can't touch the paint, and if it does, you got to run. We try to keep score and things like that. There are days, I think a lot of it comes down to teaching competition and that pride. And there are days I know if the gym's flat early, my assistant coach and he played for me all 4 years in high school. We kind of just will look at each other across the gym and just kind of give a nod. And sometimes we'll try to take turns, because I don't always want him being the bad guy or me being the bad guy. But one of us will kind of, and not we're going to break off and just start running sprints, because that's not going to help anybody's, that doesn't work 6 days a week. So then we're going to go off and quickly do we start 2 guys under the basket. They lane slide to the corners. They sprint the full length. They got to touch a chair. There's one ball in the middle. The first guy to the ball's got the ball, and they play one-on-one till somebody scores. And the guys are laughing, and they're jarring with each other, but, like, we're trying to amp them up and compete. We'll still do the roll the ball down the middle of the floor, 2 guys diving, just kind of get that sense of competition going. And then, like, after 2 or 3 minutes, we'll, like, break right back into what we're doing. And now the guys are a little bit more juiced up and, taking pride. But it comes back to something I was saying earlier where the older guys, if they want to be good defensive players and a good defensive team, they're going to get the younger guys to buy into it. Mm-hmm. And when we've had teams like that at Milton, we've had a lot of success. The 2009 state championship team we had, our best player was a kid named Rene Castro. He was a freshman. He ended up going on. He signed with Butler with Brad Stevens. And when Coach Stevens left to come to Boston, Rene ended up transferring to Duquesne where he played 4 years. He was the most talented kid in the building, but he was lazy. And we actually even put him on JV, and I was a JV coach at the time, so I kind of consider myself one of the better general managers in the JV level. Mm-hmm. I probably had the best point guard in the state for my JV team as a freshman. But, part of that was because he knew, he was with the varsity guys every day, and those older guys just drummed it home to him like, hey, man, like, if you turn it on, we're going to win the whole thing. And when he clicked about mid to second half of the season, we went on a tremendous run. And, I mean, this kid, we were at the Boston Garden in the state semifinals. We were down 10 points with just over 4 minutes left. He scored 20 points in the second half. Hit the game winner with like 7 seconds to go. And it was because he bought into that team mentality of like, I got to defend. We preach 5 against the ball. So if you're covering the ball, okay, you might want to cover the ball because you don't want to get scored on. But your job is just as important, if not more important, when somebody else has the ball, and you got to be in help and know when to help on the ball, when you got to rotate. And again, a lot of it comes down to competition and the guys holding each other accountable.
I love that idea of 5 on the ball. I think that's great. And I think you bring up a good point in that sometimes, players can get to thinking that like competition is just like offense, like, and then I'm competing, but defense is just as much of a competition. Like having the will and having the desire and effort to stop somebody is just as much competition as being the one to score on somebody. And so it sounds like that's something that's really important to you in your practice philosophy, is making sure that it's competitive and making sure that players stay sharp.
Absolutely.
So with that competition, especially in a man-to-man, like defensive setting, leads to sometimes definitely more aggressiveness. And that's something you emphasized yourself. And we talked about off air, and you mentioned it here too, that you want your man-to-man defense to be an aggressive one. What's the way in which you're balancing being aggressive versus just with being reckless and taking unnecessary risks? How do you kind of balance that and teach that so the players know, here's how we be aggressive, but also here's what it looks like to be reckless, and we want to make sure you're not doing that?
Yeah, we try. I mean, with some rare exceptions, depending on the individual, we have some like no-nos. We're not a big go for shot blocks, not a big go for steals, reaching. Those are things that, and we break those down in film quite a bit. Yeah. And that's a pretty easy way to come out of a game, is to get beat because you're reaching, to foul somebody or be out of position to rebound because you go for a shot block. So we definitely stress the discipline part. But then when the guys start to buy in and they see that if I do my job and if I'm in the right position, I'm going to be in a position to get a steal just because I'm sitting in the middle of the lane on the weak side, and the offensive player, because my teammate is an arm's length away with his hands up mirroring the ball, and when he goes to throw the skip pass that he thinks is wide open, if I'm sitting in the middle seeing ball and man, this kid I was telling my senior scorer the last few years, and he's going to head off to a Division I junior college. We're still trying to land him one because he was signed with one school that is now not having sports next year. So he's still kind of in a little bit in limbo, but he realized he could get an easy 6 to 8 points a game by playing weak side defense and jumping. I mean, he was 6'3", very long arms, very athletic kid. And he could just kind of jump from the weak side, jump a pass. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, if I can get easy buckets by doing that, now I really want to bear down and play defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense in the sense that, that solid defense and having those like solid defensive principles, doing that will create opportunities. And I think a good point that you bring up, that some players really struggle with, and I'm thinking more in terms of like a press and in terms of like trapping, is that players often feel that when they're trapping, that's when they have to like create that steal or whatever. But as you mentioned, a lot of times what you're looking for is it's on the pass. It's on like the skip pass that gets intercepted or forcing a bad pass. And I think that definitely can create more of that team mentality when somebody else is doing their job really well, creates an opportunity for somebody else.
Yeah, it comes down to discipline. Once they buy in and see that, and even like sometimes we'll show them football things. Where like, you know, you see we love watching Chip Kelly's offense. He's a New Hampshire guy, he's a local guy. And the kids are always, oh, wow, what a great fast running back. We say, yeah, but look at the 5 offensive linemen. Those 5 guys block 6. So now they're running free. And you're just trying to, you know, make those correlations that if you do your job, and obviously we're very lucky with Bill Belichick and the Patriots around here.
Yeah.
Do your job. Just do your job. Don't do anybody else's job. Be where you're supposed to be and do your thing. And if all 5 guys do that consistently, you know, it's going to create easy things for you guys on the other end. You're going to turn people over. You're going to jump passes. The ball handler's going to give it up. When we do press, same thing, you know, don't reach and don't foul 90 feet from the hoop.
Yeah.
If they can jump 2 passes and beat us 3 times, then we'll pull the press off. But until they do that, you know, it gives us a chance to give them a different look and apply a lot of our principles either in a zone press, a man press, a half court zone, or half court man.
Yeah, I love, and I'm very happy that you mentioned about the not fouling 90 feet away from the basket. My girls, they know like that just drives anyone crazy, you know, trying to do too much, and that's kind of what you're emphasizing is like I don't need you to steal the ball when you're trapping somebody. I don't need you to try and do all those things because, you know, like you said, you're gonna get fouls called, you're gonna get, you know, reckless mistakes that we don't need, and just do what you need to do. And hopefully if you're doing it the right way and the principled way, you're going to see success as you continually do it. And so, yeah, absolutely. Now, is your philosophy, is it always like percentage wise? Is it just man pretty much no matter what? Do you vary it depending on who you play, like going into a zone or anything like that? Or are you always like really looking to get as much man defense as possible?
The man is the backbone, but the way we try to teach our help side, it incorporates, it really does look like a zone if we run it correctly. And with teams, and this year we weren't a veteran team, but I had some smart younger players, and we started to incorporate a little bit of 1-3-1, a little bit of 3-2, because the principles on the backside were the same, and on the ball side they ended up being the same. I didn't get into as much pressing this year because I didn't want to put stuff in just to put it in. But I think next year, because I'll have, you know, 7 of those sophomores will be back, and my 2 juniors, I'll have a very veteran team next year where we'll be able to do man, some half court zone, but then I think a lot more full court zone press next year. And we're going to be a guard. We normally are in Milton. We're a very guard dominated team. So I think we'll be very quick. We'll be experienced. And those fundamental principles of our half-court man will be able to apply a lot of that terminology across the board and be able to do some stuff.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I feel like any defense that you run, even if you're putting in a zone or whatever defense you feel like implementing, or press or any form of defense, you need to have good man-to-man principles. Those are essential. And like you mentioned, like your defense, it could look like a zone, but it really is implementing man. And I'm sure that probably does some good and maybe fooling some teams sometimes if you can run a man that almost looks like a zone.
Yeah, you try to throw them off as much as you can. I mean, I think today they're great tools, but things like crossover and huddle, I think scouting's become a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Maybe still definitely got to put the time in, but I think in terms of being able to watch, I know myself, I can go see someone live and have a good idea, but if I can watch a film of their game 5 times, you're going to be that more prepared. So I think having some things you can throw in, especially in like a league play where you're going to see someone a second time.
Yeah.
Or in a state tournament situation where you might play somebody Tuesday and then Friday, to be able to put a little bit, like they're going to gear up for something that they saw Tuesday and be able to put in a wrinkle that you already have and been practicing, but it's based on your principles. You know, it fits with your philosophy and what the kids know, because at the end of the day, that's what's the most important, right? It's not X's and O's, it's Jimmy's and Joe's.
Yeah.
I mean, us coaches can talk this all day long, but if the kids can't do it and they can't do it with confidence at full speed, it doesn't matter. So I think being able to do a couple things and put them in as the season goes along that fit with your philosophy, and not having to kind of reteach them and retrain them, just kind of adjust. And like the same thing, it's like, algebra 1, then you get to algebra 2 and you're like, oh, okay, algebra 1 kind of taught me what I need to do here. You get that aha moment, can be pretty important in the season.
Yeah, especially like if things could like build on each other like that, and you're not overcomplicating things, which brought a question to mind is film and all of that. It's fantastic, whether crossover, huddle, and really being able to kind of dive into things and being able to rewind and do all those things. It's fantastic. And so if you're looking at film, or your staff is looking at film, is that ever going to change anything with your man-to-man, in terms of if you see a player who has a certain skill set and you see that a player like is a really good ball handler, really good shooter, are you giving players any of that information, or is it just like you said, just do your job? You don't necessarily have to worry too much about what they do and just focus on what you do on the defensive end?
Yeah, we do say that we try to focus on our philosophy, but we will definitely tweak it. And our guys, especially now with AAU, again, I think the kids know each other better.
Mm-hmm.
Like my guys now will come to me and be like, "Oh, coach, we play. I play with these guys, or I play against these guys 30 times." So that they know each other better than maybe like my generation knew each other.
Yeah.
I graduated in 1999. AAU was really just starting to maybe blow up then.
Okay.
It wasn't. I don't think every kid. Today you got kids that you end up cutting, and then you get an email from a parent saying, well, they play, on this team or this program. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But we definitely will tweak it to a kid, or like where we do a lot of weak side help. If you're covering a big time shooter, you're going to help a lot less. If you're covering, we had a kid in our league at Newton North who's produced several Division I players over the last 15 years or so. They had a kid, Ethan Wright, my first year with the boys, who now he starts at Princeton. And we just no help. We're going to play 4 against the ball today, because if we help off this kid for even a half a second, he's going to torch. And he torched us anyways. He was an Ivy League player. But
Yeah.
we definitely, in certain guards, like our screen and roll defense, we're pretty predicated on a hedge, and the hedger kind of communicating it. Certain kids we may just, and it was something we would have to practice, and a lot of it depends on the IQ of the team. But if we got a quick penetrator, we're going to automatically jump him and switch that. And we don't see a lot of big time bigs. There are definitely a couple good ones, but a lot of the bigs in New England go prep,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't really see a lot of height. And when you do, it definitely is a shock to the system. So we see a lot of shooters, a lot of penetrators. So maybe we're going to switch that screen automatically based on this kid being, we've seen him on film 3 or 4 times. We've seen him live. We probably even coached against him the first time around in the league, and try to give it a different look to, and to the opponent, give them a different look. But I would say 90% is like, we're going to focus on what we do. Mm-hmm. And the other 10%, even as I teach it and as my coaches are teaching it, we'll say, like, this is the rule. However, this could be adjusted a month from now when we play against, whoever.
Well, I think that's a good point, is that you have these fundamentals, and you have these things that are in place, and that if there is an adjustment that you need to make, it's just a small, like, little tweak. It isn't something that is so overwhelming and so new to them that like they're thinking too much about it, because I don't, at least for me personally, I don't want my girls thinking so much on the court. I just want them to kind of just know how to act and react. And so if they just have to make little minor adjustments, as opposed to completely overhauling something to accommodate one player, it's probably a lot easier for them.
Yeah, I agree 100%. If the language is the same and the principles are the same, and you're just tweaking it, I think you can be successful.
Yeah. Is your philosophy on defending the screens, has that always been the same? Has it been the same when you were with boys and girls?
It's the same what I learned when I was in 6th grade, for the most part, to be honest. Yeah. With the girls, sometimes so I've always taught the hedger has their inside hand on the lower back, and a veteran player maybe sometimes learns to grab a little bit of the lower shirt, upper shorts to slow the roller down. Other hand up in the lane, and really trying to read not only the dribbler but also your teammate, and we teach them how to get under their hips and get over the screen. The game's changed, obviously, though, since I was in sixth grade in a high school. And, kids can come off those screens now and shoot. They practice screen and roll so much. And even a good 6'3" kid rolling hard to the hoop, that can be tough to take away.
Mm-hmm.
So occasionally, and again, some of it will be scout specific, where like this kid's not a shooter, so we're automatically going under, and we'll drill that home. Like we'll have at least one, if not two, practice periods the 2 or 3 days leading up to that game where, hey, we know this point guard, he's a good player, but he's not going to shoot it. We're going to go under it and not worry about it. Or if he's a very quick penetrator, we're going to automatically switch it, and that way he can't turn the corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like there are a lot of philosophies about screening, and some really don't change, and some people have like, this is what I've done and this is what I've seen work and this is what I'm going to do. Something that I've noticed or I've seen happen a couple times, which has been relatively new to me, is I've seen defenders knock the screener off their line as they're going to go set their screen. They go set their screen and they get basically knocked off their line before they can even go set it. And so it's just fascinating to me the way that those kind of philosophies are taught. It's interesting also what a ref might or might not blow a whistle.
What you can get away with, right? Yeah.
It's crazy. I'm watching a girl, go set a screen. Next thing I know, she's getting blasted by somebody else, and they can't even set that screen, and they don't even get into it. And it's like, oh, okay, well, interesting, I guess, if it's not being called.
Adjusting to what the referees allow you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with that being said, because screening also kind of made me think about that, what's the importance and how much emphasis do you put intentionally, kind of as we talk a little bit about practice planning now, in terms of communication and making sure that players are talking on the court? Because sometimes players get the sense, or they feel like man-to-man defense is a very like individual thing and there's not a need for a lot of communication, but as we know, communication is so important. So how does that kind of fit into your philosophy and how you go about teaching that?
That's one of the few things that they'll get punishment running for. If it's a quiet gym is a losing gym, and my coach and I have a loud voice, my assistant's got a loud voice, we both have a background as football coaches as well, and that's one thing I won't put up with. And again, a lot of it comes back to who are your players, who are the kids on the court. If they want to be loud and talk, I say to them all the time, I go, I hear your teachers, my peers come to me all day long and say, so-and-so won't shut up in class, but then you come out here and I can't hear you call a screen from 3 inches away. When we're going over, communicating, and they're whispering, I say, don't you want to play in a gym this year with 5,000 people there? You think anyone's going to hear you call that out? So we'll tease them, we'll yell. I mean, that's one thing I haven't figured out a drill for, or a way to, it comes down to the kids. And some teams are real loud and really want to do it, and others, we were a pretty quiet team this year, and it reflected our crunch time defense, I think, more than anything. We lost some close games late in games, where a simple defensive miscue. We lost a game at Natick, was one of the better teams in our state this year. We lost there on a 3-pointer at the buzzer because 2 guys ran at the ball when they shouldn't. One guy shouldn't have, and they didn't communicate. And I say to the guys, I go, that's one game. You lose another game, and now you've lost a home game in the tournament. Now you've got knocked out of the league, and you do all this hard work and all the preparation, and we get some talent. And the fact that you wouldn't communicate on a drive and kick out, and 2 guys ran at it and he threw it back to the passer for an open 3 at the buzzer. I mean, that's league championship, and that it is what it is, and it's a learning experience for them. And I hopefully they would. I've tried to get better at after a loss, letting it go, and at least in the locker room with the kids. Maybe on the ride home, not as much. So my 5-year-old, I have 5 children. My 5-year-old son, my oldest boy, comes to a lot of the games, and I think the kids, when they see him there, are like, oh, thank God he's here, because coach will definitely be a little more relaxed in the locker room tonight. But the communication's so important, and I don't know. Part of it is like we go out for a team meal, and you see 15 phones out as soon as they sit down, and we just put a hat out and say, put your phones away. We're here to talk. You got to talk to each other. You got to build these relationships. And I know you're friends, but don't Instagram comment across, or if you want to Snapchat that coach got an extra large fry, like that's one thing. You want to have a little bit of a joke, but talk to each other. Be in the moment. Be present, because it carries over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all of those team building things and anything that's even off the court that deals with communication will translate into communication that they can do on the court and being able to feel comfortable communicating with one another. And so you mentioned about screens and you mentioned about the situation where two people ran out at a shooter. Have there been other situations that you've seen in your coaching, whether it's positive or negative, where like communication is so important because of this particular situation or this particular instance? I just really want to reinforce this for people listening about the importance of communication and how much you value it.
All right, so I mentioned that state. So 11 years ago, we're at the Boston Garden state semifinals. Like I said, we were down 10. Renee Castro goes down, makes a beautiful shot in the lane. Now, the kid that gave the ball up was our senior point guard.
Yeah.
We have two major newspapers in Boston, the Herald and the Globe. He was an all-scholastic in both papers. He's an all-state player, went on to play. He had a great career at Babson College, was MVP of the league, multi-time all-star. He didn't have a good shooting night, so he actually got the ball in the inbounds when they took the lead, 69-68. He handed the ball off to a freshman. Renee goes down, makes his move. He scores in the lane. Marcus was on, and kid's name is Marcus McDermott. He was on the wing in front of our bench. Woober, the team we ended up beating, they inbounded to their senior kid who was a Division II player. He'd actually become the all-time leading scorer in the school during that game. He torched 35 points. We put a 5'7" kid on him. My head coach then, and it's a very good friend of mine, Coach LaPresti, still teases me this day when hey, for all you think you're such a defensive genius, you put a 5'7" guard on a 6'5" forward. We had nobody over. We had one 6'3" kid, and they had a 6'8" kid. So it's a joke, run and joke with us. But short story long, this kid broke up the sideline. Now Marcus sprints back into the play, and there's under 10 seconds in the game. And this kid's going to the hoop. Like he's going. It's the dream situation. You're the all-time leading scorer in your school. Got a chance to get out and at least draw a foul. And I remember hearing him from across as he's running across going, Gabe, keep him, don't let him go sideline, get him back middle. And the kid went to go sideline, and Gabe cut him off, and we crossed back over towards the middle. There's Marcus McDermott. Ball bounces up in the air because the kid didn't expect to see him. We steal it, just throw it ahead, and, we're on to the state championship game a couple days later. We won by 37 points. It was so that's just that little communication of, like, don't give up the sideline, make them come back to me. Want us to stay championship.
And if they can communicate that in a gym that was probably that loud with that much going on.
The Division I game that was coming on after us, Lynn English and Brockton, they were going to pack the house. That was going to be a big night. So we had a lot of people there watching, and it was just a really cool moment of, like, in the little things. People always say the little things are the big things, and in that case they were. If that kid turns a corner, he probably at least gets to the line, and we're going home with a heartbreaker. And the communication in the moment, in the biggest moment, it just turned it our way. And
yeah, yeah, and it's a good point that you bring up about the environment that you're hoping that your players want to play in. And so when you talk about communication, in defense, where if you can barely hear them in practice in a relatively empty gym, then like there's no way anybody's going to hear you. And there's 100 people in the stands, let alone, like you said, if you're playing in front of thousands of people. And so I think every coach says the same thing about, you talk so much in class, your teachers just talk about how much you talk all the time, and yet you get on here and it's like you're in church.
Yeah. Well, we're lucky in our field house. We have boys track, girls track. We have a self-funded crew team. We have wrestling and cheerleading. So when we're in both JV and varsity. So when we're practicing after school, there's actually probably like 150 to 200 kids in there working out, practicing, coaches yelling, whistles blowing. So we actually are lucky that we have some noise during the week.
Yeah.
But the thing, it's like, guys, we don't want to play in front of 150, 200 people. Like the goal is to play in front of 3,000 people. And, if you don't do it every day, and it's not going to translate.
Yeah.
I do my best. I try to have a lot of alumni come back, guys that were older than me, that were part of a great tradition in Milton, guys my age, guys I coached when I first started, come back and just, okay, it's one thing for me. And, when I first started coaching, you're a younger guy and you connect a little bit better probably because the guys are only 4 or 5 years younger than you.
Yeah.
I'm pushing 40 now. I got 5 kids. Life's a little bit different. So I sometimes I bring some of those guys back. Like Renee this year came to some practices and was able to talk to some of my younger guards about just like what it takes. We have another alumni, Keon Jones, who played at New Mexico State a couple years ago. He comes back and he just wants to. I'm getting amped up just thinking of him. Like, he's one of the most competitive young men I've ever been around, and always wants to win. And you all of a sudden you throw Keon Jones into a drill in practice, and he's a Division I player who had a shot to play overseas. And Renee, who played overseas and played Division I, and all of a sudden they're getting after it in a drill, and the kids are like, "Oh man, like I'm gonna get embarrassed if I don't go hard." So, or if I don't communicate, and then they're yelling like, "Hey, you guys think you want to play scholarship basketball because every 14, 15-year-old boy thinks they can play Division I basketball." Like, this is what it takes. Like, you have to be able to talk, you have to be able to defend the ball, you have to be able to be a good teammate. And we've been real lucky to have kids like that at Milton who come back and want to give back.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. And like I said, those people who come back, they're like superstars to your younger kids, I'm sure, and like idols. Yeah, absolutely. So kind of speaking of that, let's kind of talk a little bit then about practice planning and what does it take for you and your philosophy of how much time do you need to emphasize, whether it's shell or individual or full team? How much are you emphasizing man-to-man defense to get the results that you want when it comes to your practice planning?
I'd say almost 100% of the time. And that, other than individual offensive work or small group stuff, situational things, even like when I'm teaching when we're doing man offense,
yeah,
I'm just as much coaching the team on defense.
Yeah.
Other than if we know we're going to go against a team that plays a 2-3 and we have to do like a little show zone, most teams play man in our league, in our part of the state. So it's nice that we can, we're always able to emphasize our man. When we do like transition offensive drills, we start in a shell. They have to defend the shell in a couple of rotations. And then we say either a change of possession where like the offense passes me the ball, then I throw it to the defense who now becomes offense. Or we say it's a made basket and they got to take it out and run. Like, we always are doing shell.
Mm-hmm.
We try to rotate like 2 offensive drills, 2 defensive drills, so they're not getting static. But there's almost always comes back to that emphasis. Like, if it's an individual offensive drill and it's a one-on-one kind of 3 dribbles to score, the defense knows that if like they don't go full speed, like they're gonna hear about it either from me or like again in the years we were really good, they're gonna hear about it from their teammates.
Yeah,
they're always trying to get stops, and if they're pushing on defense in an offensive drill, it's only going to make the offense better.
Mm-hmm.
So we're always preaching that, and it's kept us in a lot of games, and it's won us a lot of games.
So you're making sure that no matter what's happening, like on the offensive end or whatever it is you're working on doing, that you're always paying attention to defense. And so I'm always fascinated by this. Is it a situation where if like your offense, say you're running something on offense and it's just not being successful or not going as well as you want to, are you emphasizing how like well that your defense is doing versus like offense
Absolutely.
needs to be better? Is that kind of the philosophy?
Both. Again, some of it comes back where we share the time with the JVs.
Yeah.
We'll do some stuff where like the varsity will be on 12 minutes, then the JV's on for 6. When the varsity's on, my assistant coach is coaching with me, and we'll kind of take turns. Like, some days I'll emphasize the offense and he'll be the defensive coach,
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll flip-flop. And then when the JVs go on is kind of when I then take the clipboard and we have a discussion with the varsity guys about what we did well on offense, what we didn't do well on offense, what we did well on defense, what we didn't do well. And then after the 6 minutes of the JV, like, we're right back out there.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing, they're having one coach is coaching the offense, one coach is coaching the defense. So we try to maximize the fact that we got to be all together. And then all of a sudden, mid-season, now we're throwing a JV guy in for a varsity guy, and it's like, hey, sink or swim, man. Like, your time's here. You got to prove something.
Yeah.
We try to do our best to always have both coaches, when the varsity's going live, have their eyes on them.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, because I feel like you can get caught up on both sides. If you're trying to watch both sides and you see, a player knock down a shot, and then you're like, well, did the defense do? And okay, well, this person didn't help, and I don't know if that shot should have been open to begin with. And you can sort of get lost in your own head where if you have other coaches there, like, okay, I'm just focusing on, okay, a good pass was made, a good shot was taken. Like, okay, that's what I'm worried about right now. And the other coach can kind of think about, not that you're not paying attention to defense, but their primary focus is, okay, what happened here on the defensive end that like led to that shot being taken.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, I'm lucky. And Tommy's such a great assistant. He's a former player, and he knows the system.
Yeah.
And when the alumni come back, it's like, hey, you're not just here to hang on the sideline and get a free shirt from coach. Like, you're asking, like, you know what I'm trying to accomplish. So, coach these guys, be with them. And,
Yeah.
but it all comes back, they know the language. So it's not like they're teaching a different philosophy. They're reemphasizing things they learned about 10 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Even my younger brother, who's our school's all-time leading scorer, he's not maybe the most vocal guy in the world, but he comes in and he'll work with the guys, and it allows me to then, okay, if he's here, he can do the offense. That allows me to really focus on the defense.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause,
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's. I wish we had more money and more funding, maybe to have like a paid assistant.
Right.
We kind of bribe guys. I bartended for years. I always have cash laying around, cash here and there, and some free gear. But you try to get as many guys giving the same message to the kids so they're hearing it.
Yeah, no, the more eyes you can get, and the more people you can get kind of promoting that message and reflecting it. And like I said, I'm sure it's really powerful to have alumni who still remember and can still adhere and talk to it and be like, hey, like, no, like this is important and this works. And like, I remember when I did this and how much it paid off. Like, I'm sure that message is invaluable.
Yeah, we do a Christmas Eve every year. We do a morning run. From like 9 to 11. It's open to anybody who played boys basketball at Miller High, and it's great. Guys that are more who coach. Like I went and watched when I was little, to guys my age, all these guys that I've been lucky to coach the last 20 years. And the best part is though when everyone's kind of sharing experiences, like in guys that I might have coached in 2003 to guys that coach now, and they're like, oh, he's still getting mad about stuff like that, and they build that fraternity, which is important. Again, we're a small school in our area, and we've had a lot of success. And we try to really emphasize that program philosophy and that family philosophy of
Yeah, absolutely. Now I wanted to bring up a comment that I don't think I heard it from like any one coach in particular. I think maybe it's just a general sentiment or a general saying I've heard be said before. So one thing I have heard before for a fact is people talking to me and say like, Coach, I don't focus a lot on my man-to-man defense because it all just comes down to effort anyway, and so I don't need to focus much on technique. What would you say to people who have that kind of philosophy that it's just effort and you don't have to spend too much time talking about technique with man-to-man defense?
Yeah, I mean, effort is a big part of it, so that they definitely have half the equation. Because like anything else, if you can plan anything out you want, but if the kids aren't into it and they don't buy into it, you're not going to execute it. But you got to be able to teach the fundamentals and some real basics where the kids understand, what you expect and what's expected of them, and how to do it, and breaking it down, making it real simple, especially early in the season. And I don't know how long is your preseason.
Well, like I said, we could do preseason really whenever. Preseason starts the day after the season ends. No, for us, it's about we can probably go about 4 to 6 weeks, as much as we want. Obviously, we got girls who are doing volleyball and doing other sports, but honestly, like the season starts
from like
when
tryouts to the first game. How long are you?
We probably got about a month, I would say, from tryouts to the first
we
game.
don't even have that. We've been pushing our league. Some schools left, some smaller schools left, and joined some smaller leagues, and we didn't. And so we're down to 13 league games now. And our coaches, we push back on the EDs, like we got to push it back. This year we had 1 full week, and then the end of the second week, that Friday, we opened. So it's a quick preseason, but even then, we try to emphasize, the shell basics, the breakdown basics, the footwork, the communication, the things they're going to hear from us a million times early, because the effort's got to be there, and the competitive spirit's got to be there. But if you get a guy that doesn't know how to see ball and man, and he might be playing as hard as he possibly can, but if he doesn't know, he gets beat backdoor 3 times because he's over aggressively denying. He might be playing hard. Yep. But you got to find that balance between, I think, playing hard and playing smart.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you'd hate to have a player exerting all this effort and then doing things wrong on the technique end, because they're going to probably get frustrated, and they're not going to be too happy if they're putting all this effort in, but it's misguided, not put in the right place. So
quickest girl in the gym might not be the best player because they might not have stance and footwork, and they think just because they're fast, they they don't need to do those things. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it works because, you know, sometimes you're the better athlete. But I think in the big games, the best teams in critical moments, the ability to play hard and play with passion is important. But to execute basics is, you know, a lot of my guys, you know, they tease me about, you know, well, Jordan this and Larry Bird and Magic that, coach. And those. And when they watched The Last Dance, when we were all home during quarantine, I was getting, never in the team group chat, but on the side, I was getting a lot of texts from guys I didn't hear from a lot saying, all right, coach, you're right. You're right. He was the best. And it was, but what the whole message of you know, a lot of his message was, you know, I might be the most talented, but it's because I focus on the little things the most. And I just feel like I do them better than anybody else. Tom Brady up here, you know, I mean, even at his advanced age, he just focused on the fundamentals of his sport. And, you know, if you have those fundamentals down and then you play with passion and effort, there's a lot you can accomplish.
Yeah. I'm a Falcons fan, so some of this Patriots talk is a little tough for me, but no, I can agree.
23 tank top underneath. Oh, sorry, Coach.
That's okay. I'm a little numb to it now at this point, I think. So I say that until I get a reminder of it.
That one hurt me. That was my last year with the girls, and we had a pretty competitive team. And we had a legitimate chance to qualify for the tournament. And the history of our girls program was they hadn't qualified since 2003. I took the job in 2011.
Yeah.
We did qualify my fourth year. And we had a couple other years like we missed it by one game. Twice we missed it by 2 games. And this team that ended up being my last team, we had a really good chance. And the problem was the Super Bowl parade came on a game day. And I had 3 starters and my 6th man skip school and go to the parade to watch Brady and Gronk, and they had to sit a few games, and we ended up not qualifying for the playoffs. And that ended up being my wife and I just had our 3rd kid, and she was always like, listen, I know you love it, but go back and just be an assistant on the boys team until he's ready to give up the head job. And I was going to do that, and then the head job opens. And it like broke me. I'm like, as much as that Super Bowl is great, my daughter, my oldest, my second oldest, my 5-year-old son, they remember that game. But then every time I think how cool it was, I mean, you know, do your job. I go, you think I would have missed a day of work to come watch your parade?
Well, Patriots fan, if you have enough Super Bowl parades, you've had enough.
Yeah, exactly. Honest to God, it's actually in my team rules now. I put it in my team rules the following year. There's a parade clause. If you miss a game, actually, even the year, this is the year we qualified for the playoffs for the girls, was the Seahawks year, and we had so much snow up here that the parade got pushed to Wednesday. So we played Tuesday, and I actually gave the girls off Wednesday. I said, you know something, you know, it's a cool thing, and it was the first time they'd won the Super Bowl in a few years. You know, we sound pretty. We're pretty lucky. We know.
Bite my tongue, yeah.
I grew up. I'm old enough now to remember when the old Foxborough Stadium, they couldn't sell out a 35,000 seat stadium. I didn't watch home games on TV when I was like 8 or 9. So I you know, these kids today have no idea how bad it can be and probably will be again someday. But I don't take it for granted. They probably do. But I let them go to the parade that year on a Wednesday. I made practice optional. And you know, I said, if you show up, we're going to shoot foul shots for like a half an hour. I'm going to send you home. But so I'm not like this mean old guy that's not going to let them go, like, enjoy. I said, girls, like, we have a game tonight. Like, you know, you got a chance to compete, and we have a state tournament berth on the line. Yeah. And we ended up missing the tournament, you know, in part because of that. So,
yeah.
Still think to come back though.
Yeah. Wow. A couple quick questions here about practice, about your own philosophy here. But before we wrap up, I'm curious about, are you with man-to-man defense, are you still implementing the step slides and the chopping your feet and those sort of drills? Are those still things that it's hard for me to tell what's passé anymore and what people do and don't do with that? Like what do you kind of do with drills like that? Do you even do them?
Some things I've phased out, some things I've kept. We start almost every I try to alternate it every other day, but almost so every other day you're an arm's length away, and you have the ball. It's a ball handling drill as well. It's a one-on-one full court, and you got to stay low and slide your feet. And you're trying to turn the guy as many times as you can. Obviously, offensively, you're looking to beat your guy and expose them. And the guys who are dribbling, who get turned too many times, we say you're not going hard enough dribbling the ball. The defenders that get blown by on the second turn, obviously, you got to work harder on D. So we try to start every day just that one-on-one compete and, keep the ball in front of you and stay low, move your feet. Like I said, we'll do those bricks, and hopefully someday I'll actually let them be able to use bricks. Some lane size for conditioning. We'll do the zigzag slide. I very rarely break out the full court one anymore, unless, again, it's like a punishment thing. I'll do it early in preseason, but I won't even have them go full speed. I'll have them, like, walk the steps and stay in their stance so I can really go around and coach them and break them down. But we'll do a lot of half-court zigzag, like baseline to elbow, elbow to half-court, sprint across, and then do it again. So they're only going half that. I almost sometimes think mentally, if they're only going half-court, they're going to probably give me a little more effort instead of like, oh, coach isn't looking, maybe I can stand up for half a second.
Yeah.
We'll do the directional stuff early. The footwork's really important.
Right.
And again, it comes back, those the little things become the biggest things. And if you have a good foundation, but if you can move your feet and you can stay in front of the ball. I even sent out to some of the guys the other day. I don't know if you saw the clip of that girl in the AU tournament who turned her girl like four. It was all over Twitter and
the one who kept turning the girl. Yeah.
Turn. And I sent it to my guys. I'm like, this is like, we got to get her on the team. Like, this is what we're looking for. This is what the girls.
Yeah.
Some of my guys, and again, the guys that are with us longer, really start to get into it, and they want to compete with their friends, and they want to. We try to, we push them hard, and we'll yell, and I'm a loud guy by nature, but I try to make the guys have fun, and they should be pulling for each other, and so we compete, we razz on it, and I try to get them to want to be able to talk a little bit to their teammates in a positive way, and kind of encourage them and motivate them, but we want guys getting juiced up and being competitive, and because playing D, it can be, it's a defensive coach, it's boring. Well, like, no, but if you get juiced up and you can intimidate your opponent and turn them over, like we talked about at the very beginning, you're going to get easy buckets, and it's going to demoralize them, and you can just, wear them down. And
yeah. Yeah, and it's a reoccurring theme that I seem to be kind of noticing with your answers and the way you're kind of implementing things in man-to-man defense is that you're making it competitive, and you're making it something that's you're working kind of more than one skill. Like you said, you're kind of doing ball handling along with working on defense, and that you're doing everything you can to kind of make it a competition. Like you said, kind of juice them up and kind of get them like amped up. And really, I think a lot of this kind of comes down to just taking pride in playing defense and really like taking ownership of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, there's even times in my assistants who played for me, as I've said a few times, think I'm gone soft, but on Saturdays, the gym's kind of empty. Yeah. Like and she was actually my assistant coach when I was with the girls. She's one of our phys ed teachers, has a big boom box in the phys ed closet. I'll bring that out, and I got a big playlist, and we're jamming music at 8 because we go early almost every day after school. So my rule is if we get to go 3 to 5 and get home early, on Saturdays we go 8 to 10 almost every week, and the girls go 10 to 12. So my guy's going to be in. I open the gym at 7. A lot of them come in early, between 7 and 7:30. We're lucky. Our boosters got us a shooting gun. They're getting shots up. They come in on their own. They don't have to be there till 7:45. But between 7 and 7:30, a lot of the guys are there. They're shooting. They're getting shots up. But they're still a little tired. We played Friday night most likely. Maybe had a long bus ride home. Very little sleep. Quick turnaround. So as soon as we start with the skill drills on Saturday morning, who knows what they're going to get from music? They might get the Pogues. They might get Tupac, Wu-Tang, Bruce Springsteen. And the cool part is, like, they're like, Coach, who's this guy? I'm like, oh, this is Bruce Springsteen. Oh, this is pretty cool. Like, this isn't too bad.
Yeah.
It ways for me, too. Again, the older I get, the more ways I can bond with my guys and connect with them. It's real important.
Yeah.
And I'll even give them the seniors occasionally. We'll get the aux cord and get to run their music, at least until it gets a little bit too.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. They know they got a short leash. Stuff they'll add to my Spotify lists and, those personal relationships, the little things. I'm thinking of, like, my 2 seniors that were my all-star seniors the last 2 years that I had that are moving on. I'm just thinking of stuff in my head now that, I haven't seen them in 4 months. And I miss those guys, and I'm sure you miss your girls, and we're lucky to do what we do. But those personal relationships and those little moments are what makes it awesome.
Absolutely. Definitely. Makes it all worthwhile, the relationships that we build. Great. To kind of wrap up and to kind of bring a little bit of closure here, Coach. This is great. I really like love talking defense. What is
I appreciate it.
yeah? What is a coaching moment of yours? You brought up so many because you have a lot of stories. Is there a particular coaching moment of yours that you think in particular other coaches listening would be able to learn from?
Ooh,
good, bad, or otherwise?
No, yeah. I mean, I think I could think of a lot. When my assistant Tommy now, when he was a sophomore, the class that won the state championship was a year ahead of him. Mm-hmm. In his sophomore class, when they were junior varsity players, the Saturday before the first game, I walked him around our gym and I pointed out all the old banners going back to the 1980s of league championships, sectional championships, state championships. And, just explaining the history. And we had won the league the year before for the first time in like 8 years. And just explaining how important this was. And I looked at them all. I said, the fact is, guys, you're going to be JV guys this year and most likely again as juniors. And you can make a decision. You can decide now that you're going to kind of coast because it's JV, but you're going to get exposed. And if you do that, this year's freshmen are going to replace you next year. You won't play. You'll get cut. And if you really buy in, you can be part of something special. And then when it's your turn, you're going to get 1 year to do it. But when it's your turn, you got a chance to be pretty special too, because there's a lot of talent in this group. And we won the league that year. We had a really good JV year. The following year, we had a phenomenal JV season. We won the state championship. And our practices that year, we had 30 guys. We kept 15 on both teams. And they were killing each other every day. But then, going home with each other. We had to kick them out of the locker room. I mean, this is before I had kids at the time. I didn't mind staying as much, but it was like, okay, guys, practice ended an hour ago. It's time to go home. I don't need your parents yelling. And when those guys were seniors, they went 16-4. They won the league championship, and they went to the sectional finals. And honestly, we should have won the state championship with a core of guys that had been JV. Other than one of the kids in their class was the 164 kid we had. He was on varsity from his freshman year on. But it was the 164 kid. 8 or 9 JV guys and then 1 freshman, and they had bought in so much that it was just about the culture and the attitude and the competitiveness. And you don't know when your time's going to come, but I'm telling you, it's not going to come probably till you're seniors. And they bought in so much. And I mean, I see those guys today, and I just our lives have changed. They're young men. They're getting married now and moving on. I got, like I said a couple of times, I got my own guys now and my own brood. But I see those guys, and I instantly can think to that Saturday morning in December of 2007 when, they kind of got like a death sentence almost. I mean, who wants to hear they're going to be a JV kid sophomore and junior year? And these kids could play. They were good players.
Yeah.
They weren't better than the kids ahead of them. And,
right.
That was a state championship class. And these guys, I mean, we had some tears in that locker room at the University of Massachusetts, Boston in the sectional final game. We should have won, and I really think we would have gone on to win the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, there was it wasn't even tears that we lost. It was tears that this 3-year journey we've had together is this part of it's closed. And I do stay in touch with a lot of those guys, and they're guys that come to my alumni game. And, I get text messages still on my birthday was 2 weeks ago. I'm getting texts from most of my former players before family members reach out.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was real lucky. So I would say, the long story short, the relationships are the best thing. And some years you're going to be real good, and other years maybe not so good. And if I got time for one more, I had a young man I coached who ended up passing away from epilepsy in college. I had his younger sister. She could barely make a layup when no one was around. She was the tallest girl we had. Was a pretty good athlete, just couldn't do basketball, but we always kept her. And she was a great teammate, a great kid. And I used to bring in my state championship ring from when I was a player and from when I was an assistant coach. At one point every season, I bring him in and kind of just pass him around, talk about what it is to be a team and the memories. And it's not always about championships. She gave me a ring at the end of that year. I don't know where she got it. It wasn't a lot expensive, but it was, hey, coach, I know we didn't win the state championship, but I always hope you add this ring to the discussion. And that ring has made the discussion, because this ring is just as important to me than any other one. And, the relationship I had with her and her mom and her brother and, their family. And it's just it's all relationships. And if the kids believe in you and love you and trust you, they'll run through a wall for you. And they might not know how to run through the wall, but they'll do with, and I'm sure you see this with your teams, and you know, the time we spend with them is priceless. And I can tell you, I'm thinking of my two seniors a couple of times talking. You know, my all-stars and the other two seniors that graduated, and like how much I'm gonna miss, you know, Earl and Dalen and Nosa and Sam next year, and how excited I am for them to move on with their lives. But like I'm like the left behind guy at the end, and then you know, my son now is, you know, he's like Dalen's going to college in Atlanta. Earl is going in Philadelphia, or maybe now Texas. Like my kids are attached to these guys because they go to the spring leagues and the fall leagues and the summer leagues.
Yeah.
And they're on the bench. My oldest, my 5-year-old's on the bench with me at a lot of home games, and it's all relationships.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It is all relationships, and what's always been fascinating to me is when I talk to former players and talk about things that they remember and memories that they have. It's always like that Saturday practice or like that bus ride or like something that they bonded with each other, and that, you know, I don't have any, there's no former player of mine that talks to me about, you know, our great half court defense that we ran.
You know, that baseline out of bounds play, we ran that.
No, it's never that. It's always the how you made them feel and the teammates and as you know, you can attest to, like, so many of these players that we coach, the teammates that they have become in some cases lifelong friends and just things that are just so much beyond basketball. And so
you're gonna have a table at a wedding, and every wedding they every time they get married, all those people will be at a table, and
yeah,
it's I had two brothers once that they came to me and said, they were like the hardest working guys I had, and Coach, we hate to say it, but we got tickets. Kansas was #1 in the country, and they were playing at BC on a Saturday at noon. And they had tickets, and I pulled like the Friday night, like, no, you have practice tomorrow. And they left, and I didn't have, you know, we had cell phones because it was the 21st century, but like I didn't think to text them at 11 o'clock to say, just go to the game. So I bought tickets from a friend of mine who had them. And then I called my brothers and I said, I want you tomorrow to come to practice. And I bought you guys Kansas BC tickets. I want you to come and get them. And they came to practice, and these two kids were like, what are your brothers here for? I said, well, I had Kansas tickets. Like, I went and paid money just so I could emphasize, like, they could feel that, like, okay, Coach gave this up too.
Wow.
They give up a lot for us. And I sometimes I look back, I'm thinking of that now. That was 12 years. And, you know, you think of, like, what the kids give up for you, and you try to give up as much, if not more, for them. And at the end, it's worth it. Even if, you know, you finish 25-0, or if you finish 10-10 or 5-15, I mean, you know, we spend a lot of time with them, and we're lucky to be able to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, we brought so much closure to this, but I always give every guest an opportunity to kind of go on their 60-second soapbox to kind of give a final thought or reemphasize something. And I know you did a beautiful, eloquent job just doing it now, but I want to give it to you anyway. So if you have a final thought or something you really want to reemphasize, Coach, I want to give you the floor to do that.
I start by thanking you, Coach. I love talking hoops, and this has been the last 4 months have been crazy, and I've had some opportunities with some local coaches, but the times haven't worked. So this late time has been great. There's 9 to 10 because my little guys are still awake. But every coach I've ever coached against, I've coached for, under, with every former player, kids I've coached against. I always try to, the last time I coached against a team, to try to pull the seniors aside, win or lose, when we shake hands, and just thank them. You know, obviously you want to win, you want to rip each other's hearts out, but when it's over, you remember that, like, you know, there's 16, 17, 18-year-old kids on the other end of that line. And I try to be the coach that maybe I wasn't always as a player in terms of, like, having, you know, you understand it more. So I love this game, and I'm real thankful. And I really should thank my wife most of all. I mean, she's home with 5 kids.
There you go.
Gave up her own coaching. We grew up together. We went to high school together, and we both got into this because we love it. She was a teacher and coach, and you know, we lost in the state tournament this year, and I'm coming home, and she's like, just go out and get something to eat. And even though she got 2 twin babies, 6-7 months old, crying, she knows how much I put into it, and she puts in more than I do. So I'm real lucky that way. But the coaches, the players, the coaching clinics, the people that want to give back, it's just such a special world, and I'm real thankful, and I'm real thankful for this opportunity. I really enjoyed tonight.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I'm doing the same thing as you are, just kind of going crazy without having a lot of basketball myself to be invested in. And so these conversations are great. And it's funny, like so many so many coaches will say what you did, like the spouse is the one that's keeping everything together. So yeah, shout out to shout out to the family members and the spouses.
She's a Hall of Famer in our high school too. I mean, she's a great athlete, great coach, and we kind of had that talk when we had kids, and she's let me do it. And she doesn't go to as many games. She watches some film when I don't know, and then I get a little bit of feedback what I should be doing. And she's my number one. She was actually the year I coached the girls. My first year with the girls, she was I inherited her. She was already an assistant coach, so we coached together that one season, and that was the year she became pregnant with our oldest. So. That's a special coaching memory too. I mean,
oh, yeah, love it. Well, Coach Donovan, this is great. It's a conversation. We talk about man-to-man defense, but so much more about basketball and relationships and what basketball means to us. So I want to thank you for spending some time giving you your insight about defense, about your program and everything. And fingers crossed that we have some basketball that we get to watch and coach soon.
I agree. Coach, thanks, and good luck this year. And I'm your new biggest fan. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for all of you listening. I'm Mike Hernandez. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.